Next news. Breaking news from the White House.
Vice President J.D. Vance has dropped a bombshell in Maine that should make every taxpayer furious. One illegal immigrant allegedly pocketed $15 million in Medicaid cash by claiming to offer interpreter services while delivering nothing. This single case happened almost entirely under the last administration that never lifted a finger to stop it. Now, an 84-page report from Minnesota accuses Governor Tim Walz of fostering a culture of tolerance that let fraudsters walk off with $9 billion in Medicaid alone. The question is simple. How deep does this rot go, and why did previous leaders ignore the warnings for years? You see, this fraud hits every American right in the wallet. Your hard-earned tax dollars meant for the truly needy, instead line the pockets of scam artists driving Lamborghinis while collecting low-income aid. In Maine, in Minnesota, the same pattern appears. Whistleblowers ignored, oversight thrown out the window, and billions vanishing into thin air. Communities lose real services because corrupt networks exploit the weak rules. And politically, it shows why voters demanded change last November. President Trump and Vice President Vance are finally treating this as the national security and trust crisis that it is. Without aggressive cleanup, these programs collapse and honest families pay the price for years of neglect. While the administration cracks down on waste, breaking news shows America securing its future in critical minerals as well. This breaking news: Saga Metals, trading as SAGMF in the United States and SAGA in Canada, is back in the spotlight much sooner than expected. In less than 6 months, this company has moved at a pace rarely seen in the critical mineral space. Less than 48 hours ago, Saga announced a 100% drill success rate across all 57 holes at its Radar project, and they did it ahead of schedule. That alone would be major news, but it's only part of the story. Saga also added $10 million to its treasury through a financing round that strengthens its position. Watch for the in-depth interview on this topic on Sunday, and check the link in the description for full details on how Saga Metals supports American resource independence. Now back to the fraud fight after this big national security win. You see, Vance didn't stop at the numbers. He fired off a classic zinger that had the crowd roaring. Are dead people getting food stamps? The vice president asked the question. Call them old-fashioned, but dead folks do not eat. And someone in the crowd yelled, "They vote!" And he shot back that, unfortunately, they vote for Democrats. That line captures the entire mess that's been exposed so far. And this, just in, Fox News Politics reports, Minnesota House Fraud Committee drops an 84-page final report accusing Governor Tim Walz of enabling a culture of tolerance that let fraudsters steal an estimated $9 billion in Medicaid and $300 million in meal programs. The report says the administration ignored and consciously downplayed years of whistleblower warnings while prioritizing compassion over compliance. Democrats on the committee blocked a subpoena of Representative Ilhan Omar over her alleged ties to the convicted fraudsters. So the Minnesota report nails Walz for letting billions slip through the Medicaid programs, and Vice President Vance shows how one illegal immigrant in Maine pocketed $15 million doing the same exact thing.
Let me talk a little bit about just one person, because I think it highlights how bad the fraud problem has been in the state of Maine. We had an illegal immigrant in this community who said that she was providing services, interpretive services, to other immigrants. Okay, so Medicaid reimburses people to provide interpretation services for people who don't speak English. Which, by the way, people should be speaking English in the United States of America. I think that's common sense. But this woman, her name was Rakiya Muhammad. And it turns out that Rakiya Muhammad was not a particularly upstanding citizen, okay? So while she said that she was providing interpretation services, do you know what she was actually doing? Providing zero services and collecting the $15 million over a 5-year period that was going directly into her pocket. And that happened pretty much during the entirety of the Biden administration. and no one in the Biden administration thought to step in and stop this ridiculous fraud. Now, I have two questions when it comes to Rakiya Muhammad stealing $15 million from every single person in this room. Question number one is, why was this person in the United States of America to begin with? Call me crazy, but I think that when we welcome new immigrants to the United States of America, they should be people who enrich our country and bring some good skills into our country, not a person who's going to steal $15 million from the people in this room. But second of all, why on earth are we allowing a person to steal $15 million from all of you without the state government lifting a finger to stop it? Why did it take Washington coming in from the outside to ensure that this person who is defrauding you is going to go to prison? And ladies and gentlemen, that's exactly what she's going to happen. Convicted guilty, and she's going to jail, which is where she belongs.
So Vance laying out how Rakiya Muhammad stole $15 million with zero services delivered. A Maine crowd member just shouted exactly where fraudsters like her belong. Listen.
You like having a state governor who doesn't work with the federal government to fight against fraud? So let's kick Janet Mills to the curb. And let's send Paul LePage to Washington to help us fight the fraudsters and protect all of you. Do you like having a state?
Sorry.
Do you like having a state governor who?
Send him to Gitmo.
This guy just said, send him to Gitmo. No comment, sir, but I kind of like sending the fraudsters to Gitmo. We got to get him out of this country, and we got to get him in prison. Here's the thing.
Send him to Gitmo. He likes the idea for these crooks. And Democrats like Tampon Tim have spent years letting them walk instead. Republicans posting, Democrats like Tampon Tim have been letting criminals get away with enormous fraud for years, all on taxpayer dime. President Trump is putting an end to it. Minnesota House Fraud Committee drops 84-page final report accusing Walz of enabling a culture of tolerance to let fraudsters steal an estimated $9 billion in Medicaid. So Trump's team is going after the fraud Democrats enabled, and now Vance is asking why dead people are still cashing in food stamps.
We're going to talk about that in a second, but it's unbelievable how much you have been fleeced by your own government over the past 15, 20, 30 years. Nobody was looking at this. Nobody was asking difficult questions like, for example, are dead people getting food stamps? Okay? Call me old-fashioned, but I don't think that dead people eat, so certainly they don't need food stamps. Unfortunately, they vote for Democrats, they don't vote for us, my friends. But why is it that we have people who are driving Lamborghinis? And that is true. People driving Lamborghinis who are getting low-income assistance that's supposed to go for housing and food for our people.
Unbelievable.
Why is it that we have
driving Lamborghinis on food stamps? Here we have the U.S. Attorney General for Fraud, Colin McDonald.
This case really demonstrates the need for the federal government to be laser focused on the fraud that is pervasive across our country. What this case involved was a series of sophisticated fraudsters who teamed together to prey on the elderly, the sick, and the vulnerable in the United States, utilizing call centers in the Philippines, using telemarketing campaigns to call Medicare beneficiaries to then ask them whether they had certain health problems that might require certain medical equipment. When these individuals would then respond to those telemarketing campaigns, they would actually call a call center in the Philippines, where these individuals in the Philippines were part of this scam, to then ask the elderly, does your knee hurt? Do you have wrist pain? And when in the natural course, these individuals, these victims would say yes, they would get funneled from there to certain telemedicine providers who were also in on the sham, and they were signing fake prescriptions and fake orders to then be able to order durable medical equipment and then bill the taxpayer for it.
Unbelievable. The U.S. Department of Justice posting this. The owner of healthcare software company convicted of $1 billion Medicare fraud conspiracy. The Department of Justice just crushed one of the most egregious fraud schemes in Florida history. That's according to the acting Attorney General Todd Blanche. The illegitimate operation stole more than $1 billion from American taxpayers, including hundreds of thousands of Medicare beneficiaries. Cold, calculated, industrial-scale theft targeted the sick and elderly, coercing vulnerable people into buying unnecessary medical equipment. We will not rest until every fraudster ripping off the American people is held accountable. And here is the guy. $1 billion stolen from Florida proves the scale of the problem. Vance is now squaring off with a reporter who claims that Maine's fraud numbers don't compare.
One more question, then we'll hit the road.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President, for taking questions. I'm Phil Hirschkorn from News Center, Maine. So it turns out that Maine does have a Medicare fraud control unit. You mentioned that a few minutes ago. I'm wondering, you said Maine could be the third worst state after states like California and Minnesota, which have proven tens of millions, maybe hundreds of millions of dollars in fraud and many federal convictions. So far, what we've heard about from the federal government in Maine is questionable $45 million in the autism services, which you mentioned. We've also heard about $1.7 million in questionable billing by a Somali immigrant-run NGO. My question is,
Guys,
what else?
It's all right. Now, I appreciate you all standing up for me, but trust me,
hey, we still have innocent until proven guilty in this country. My question is, what else do you got? What else has your task force flagged that we should be concerned about? Because those amounts are a lot, 46 million, 1.7 million, but they don't really compare to California and Minnesota. What else should we expect from your task force? Thank you.
Let me say a few things. So, ladies and gentlemen, we've got biased reporters in all states. It's okay, trust me. I can handle it. But here's what I'd say. A few things. Number one, you talk about the scale of the fraud being less in Maine than it is in California. Well, California has a population that's much higher than Maine, so that's not necessarily a fair comparison. Number two, we've frankly been at this less long than we have in Maine than in other states. Okay, this is something where I would say, you notice a pattern, and you're right, innocent until proven guilty. But what I've noticed is a pattern that when you see certain types of fraud and certain types of programs, that's the tip of the iceberg. And when I see that autism services fraud in the Medicaid program in the Somali community, but not just that, I see local and state politicians who don't care about policing that fraud. That's the tip of the iceberg. And we're going to find out just how deep that iceberg is. And I suspect, I can't promise, but I suspect we are going to find hundreds of millions of more dollars every single month that we look in the state of Maine, because this is not a state that takes it seriously.
So, the real truth here, that the establishment hid for years, is that this fraud was never accidental. Previous policies created open season on taxpayer funds while prioritizing compassion over basic compliance. President Trump's team is reversing that by design. Every uncovered scheme from Maine to Minnesota to Florida proves the same point. Weak borders and lax rules invited industrial-scale theft. The new administration is delivering accountability instead of excuses. So this is why the fraud crackdown matters so much. It restores faith that government can finally protect the people it serves. If you want to stay ahead of the next revelations before YouTube buries them, text raw feed to 844-840-4963 and get direct updates straight to your phone from me. Make sure you check out the Next News merch shelf for the latest America 250 gear. So let me ask you this. Do you think that dead people should keep receiving benefits? Drop a yes or no in the comments and let us know what other states you want us to investigate next. Thanks for watching and standing with America First.
The system controls information. Information control is power.
They don't want you to see this.
The truth only survives together. They don't want this shared. Share this now.